Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the ICC. I'm so delighted that you've come here today. It's going to be a really illuminating and empowering event, I'm sure. I'm Angela Maxwell. I'm Director of Acuwoman, and I'm a board member of Advantage West Midlands. We've got some excellent speakers for you today, both in here and the main session, and also in the breakout clinic sessions. Just before we start, as is normal, bit of housekeeping. If you could just double check your phones are on silent, please. And there's no fire drill planned, so please leave by the exits if the alarm goes off. I know many of you here today are experts in all things digital, and you'll undoubtedly know a great deal more about technology than I do. So I'll leave the clever stuff to the speakers. But the reason we're all here for 2 days over Hello Business is the shared vision we have between us. And that's for digital inclusion. We want it to continue apace for every business, learner, citizen and worker to harness the powers of technology. And there's something I'd like you to all bear in mind today, something to keep in the back of your mind whilst you're learning and further broadening your horizons. This week in general, and today in particular, isn't just about celebrating Birmingham's position at the centre of the UK's digital industries. It's about how we take it further, making the foundation upon which we build the future economy of the city and the West Midlands. Every one of us knows people who aren't comfortable with, won't embrace, or just downright dismissive of technology. Inevitably, and I suspect we all know this, it's generally down to the quite natural fear of things we don't understand or don't feel comfortable with. It has to be said, for somebody to whom the whole digital world doesn't come immediately naturally, it can appear daunting. But like almost anything in life, once you let go of the edge, take baby steps into the unknown, the opportunities are endless. Many of you here may well be in that boat, taking the first steps into the future, and I'm sure you'll find today really helpful. Others I know are much more advanced and are already well down the path and achieving great things in the digital arena. However, inclusivity is the key to the successful realisation of the vision of Birmingham as a centre of digital excellence. And I think there's a role for everybody here today to help make that happen. So what I want you to do is all think of ways that, when you leave here today, you can take what you've learned and open the minds of others, bringing more like-minded and creative souls into the fold. I know you're a friendly lot, so let's do our bit collectively to spread the word. Take what we learn and do our bit to try and break down the barriers that stop everyone getting involved. Frankly, as you'll find out shortly, it's absolutely essential to the economy of the West Midlands and the UK that we do so. So now, without further ado, please let me introduce you to Mark Barrow, Strategic Director of Development at Birmingham City Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. Good morning, everybody. I'd like particularly to welcome Neelie Kroes, the EU Commissioner for the Digital Agenda. Today marks the last day of a week of seminars and events sharing our learning, our experiences, and also celebrating Birmingham and the region's digital credentials, which we believe firmly establishes us as a location of choice for innovators, entrepreneurs, and businesses wanting to join the growing digital economy. We have a fantastic heritage here in Birmingham, built on ambition and innovation, and no surprise that Birmingham is now one of Europe's most improved cities for business, according to Cushman & Wakefield's European Cities Monitor. I've got some wonderful news to share with you. In the early hours of this morning in Suwon in South Korea, it was announced that Birmingham is one of the top 21 intelligent communities in the world. I suspect that's a commentary on technology, but we'll take it for what it is. And to receive the news during this week is a boost to all of us. The Intelligent Community Forum is a think tank that studies how broadband supports economic and social development of the 21st century community. So to get an endorsement from them in that context actually is something that we can be truly proud of. I believe that it's our awareness of how the world is changing and how we need to plan for the needs of tomorrow that is separating us currently from many others. The world in 2050, for example, will be very different than it is today. Global population 6.6 billion, By 2050, it'll be over 9 billion, heading for 10. Our place, most of us here are Europeans, our place in the world as Europeans will be very different. Our demography is pretty static. The rest of the world actually is growing reasonably quickly. So what does that mean for us? I mean, as the UK, our economy in 2005, we were the 4th biggest economy in the world. Currently, we're about 7th. By 2015, we'll be 11th. It's a good job the G8 got changed to a G20, wasn't it? And actually, by 2050, who knows where we will be in a new world economically. And that extends to all spheres in life, and I think we need to think seriously about how we want to play a role in that future world. So, nations of all types are challenged to create prosperity, stability, and cultural meaning in a world where jobs, investment, and progress increasingly depend on being connected. And it's the word connected that I'll stress, I think, through my presentation. So that's why we're growing the digital and knowledge-based economy. That's why it's a central theme in our emerging economic development strategies. A couple of weeks ago, we launched a master plan for Birmingham called the Big City Plan. Everything to do with creative industries, the knowledge economy, digital economy was at the heart of that. It's not just an ambition in terms of physical space and buildings. So hopefully you may have noticed that in terms of physical investment, you'll have seen the start of some work to redevelop our train station in the heart of Birmingham, U Street. That's a project of about 700 million euros. You may have seen as you walked in this morning some building work next door, which is the development of a new library. We call it the Library of Birmingham. It won't just be a library full of books, may I add. It will be an information resource centre, really, for the modern age. That's broadly costing about 200 million euros. We're working with partners to invest in the development and expansion of Birmingham Airport. That's about 140 million euros. It's quite a lot for 400 metres of tarmac, really, isn't it? But interestingly, that 400 metres of tarmac puts 2,000 miles on the reach of the planes that will use the airport. So interestingly, you can start to see the theme here about connectivity. The development of high-speed rail in the UK, this government is supporting. We will be about 30 minutes from London when that is developed. Actually, it takes longer to get across London than it will do to get from London to here. So whether it's digitally or whether it's physically, you know, in this part of the world, we really understand that need for connectivity. So, the internet, of course, continues to revolutionise life for all of us. Whether it's in the creative industries, whether it's actually in media, whether it's in just business, whether it's in your personal life in terms of communication, and who knows where actually it will take us ultimately. And that's why conferences such as this one are so important for us to learn and share and actually just network and build relationships with each other. And hopefully, it's with the foundations of strong partnerships. And we're also launching a programme of creating digital districts around Birmingham. We see ourselves as a global digital city with connections across the world. The first of these districts won't be too far from here in an area called Eastside. We do see it as a catalyst to encourage growth and the knowledge-intensive business sectors. It will have ultra-fast connectivity. Big issue at the moment is investment and the need for investment and the pressures on capital, resources at a government level at least. So in addition to other assets that we've got in the city, such as the Science Park and a range of other projects and programmes, we do see Birmingham having a competitive advantage that will support existing businesses, will support our case for inward investment. It will encourage new business startups. We do want to retain the best graduates. It will result in better paid and more jobs. And hopefully we can work towards developing a prosperous and productive city. For those of you that attended the dinner the other evening, and I suspect a few of you did in the room, you'll know what an excellent tradition of innovation and creativity we have in this part of the world. We were at the heart of the Industrial Revolution. The digital revolution is very, very different, but we're determined to be at the forefront of that revolution as well. So I'll stress creative industries, of which digital media is a key element, is recognised here as being vital to our future economic growth, and it's vital to the UK economy. The creative sectors in the UK, in terms of economic estimates, puts them growing at 2% above the rest of the economy, accounting for 6.2% of gross value added and responsible for currently 4.5% of all of our exports. That's a huge kind of 0 to 60 in a sector, to be honest. Software, computer games and electronic publishing sectors are the biggest contribution to GVA in the creative industries, and with those sectors increasing at a rate of 9% average growth over the last 10 years, who knows what's possible in the future. Our creative industries are already generating, we think, about £1 billion to Birmingham's GVA, and there are 20,000 workers in the creative sector within the city. But national trends suggest the same number again work in creative occupations in non-creative firms. That's an interesting job title, isn't it? Already this year, Birmingham has also been voted the most successful city in Europe for promoting new business startups and entrepreneurship at the European Cities Entrepreneurship Ranking. God, you can tell I was up late last night, can't you? Beating the likes, and apologies for colleagues from these cities, London, Paris, Frankfurt and Madrid. So we're up there, we're competing, we're at the forefront. If I'm honest, we need to tell our story a bit better. We need the world to know how good a story we've got here. So this reputation is deserved and hard won. Our challenge is to keep at the forefront. We don't want to just survive the next decade, we want to thrive. So our aim now is to grab this agenda and to run with it. Hopefully, those of you that are partners will be running with us. A recent Price Waterhouse report, interestingly, stated that unemployed people who get online can increase their chances of gaining employment with an estimated lifetime benefit of £12,000. Actually, that's not a bad return, maybe, for investment in a computer and broadband and maybe a bit of training and skills. And if just 3.5% of our digitally excluded population found a job online, it would deliver a net economic benefit of £560 million in the UK. And I'll just add in there, one of the phrases that I picked up from our Chancellor's announcement the other day on public spending going forward that really grabbed my attention was a quote: "We are ruthlessly going to focus on areas that create investment in the economy going forward." And I think that's important for all of us to focus in on. You know, actually, there are lots of competing needs in society at the moment. Do we put resources into dealing with the symptoms, or actually do we build the bridge out of the various challenges that we've got? So let's see where that takes us.
Good morning, everybody. A long, long time ago, I'm a little bit older than most of you, in the former century, and that is the connection between Birmingham and this area and me, myself. I was a member of the Dutch government, and my colleague at that time was Nick Ridley. And Nick and I were attending councils in Brussels. I can assure you that were not the most inspiring days, so to say. So Nick and I were going for a cup of coffee, and we were aware, talking about aviation policy, that it was really blocked. The big airlines were taking the theme and there was no movement. And Nick told me, "Neelie, can't we come through?" And I said, "I'm your girl." Again, our civil servants on both sides, they said, "Don't move. There is no way that there could be a success." Long story short, at the end of the day, the two of us took the initiative to break through all those ministers, colleagues, and what have you, from countries that were protecting their airlines like hell. So Italy, France, and name it. And we indeed went through, and that was the first step of the liberalization of the aviation policy. And what we had in mind at that time, and that was indeed what Nick was protecting, is that in the Midlands, Birmingham, it is by excellence a point where revolution can come to start. And if we can come to start the aviation policy open and giving the floor to other airlines than only the big ones, then I can assure you it's not only good for the new airlines, the newcomers, so to say, but it's extremely important for the settlement of business activities in that area. And it is, of course, also for tourists and so on. And we were successful. So it was working out. And even taking into account that it is a long time ago, transition, Mark, like you were mentioning, started quite early. And it is indeed a fact that with opening markets, and that is all what we are talking now with the digital economy, if we can be successful in opening markets, then there will be a strategic difference between what we had, what we have, and what we will face. Having said that, I'm really, pleased to be in your midst. And it is not only because for that I open doors and you are used to that. It's not only to be here and so on and so forth, but it's also getting an opportunity to get food for thought. For I'm looking forward to our question time and under the delightful ruling of a famous journalist of this area. So I'm looking forward, so to say. Let me just be quite specific. The partnership, the sharing, those things are the spirit of the digital agenda. And the digital agenda for Europe, and I want to explain a little bit more, starts with sharing a secret. I think that cities are where the digital action is. Not more and not less. Cities. 80% of us living in cities or in big towns. So a big impact, and a big impact is possible. Yet cities are small enough to act quickly, even a city of 1 million inhabitants. It is the perfect combination, so to say. By the way, you need good politicians. But okay, that is covered in Birmingham, Malcolm is assuring. Still, you might be thinking, what on earth has Brussels got to do with my business? And I can imagine that you are just putting that question now and then. Why, and I'm thinking what you are thinking, why should I care what that Dutch woman has to say? The simple fact is, ladies and gentlemen, that we can choose between maximizing the potential of information and communication technology or lose the race for competitiveness. So we need this action, this digital action at all levels. European level, national level, Birmingham level, and in your offices and in your homes. And the European Union has drawn up an action plan to kickstart this. And as we know, the challenge today is to do more with less. It couldn't be more at the scene of today. Number one, rightly mentioned by Mark, we have more elderly people to care for. We are facing an aging population. We need to reduce our carbon emissions. We have big public deficits, and businesses face more intense competition from around the world. For it's not only Korea who's mentioning that you are top, but they are also your main competitors, so to say. Of course, we must also find ways to integrate a new generation into our society. And none of those pressing challenges can be solved without a strong ICT component. And it's not a matter of you are pleased with that yes or no. It's just real life, so to say. It is a fact of life. So my conclusion is that business and the digital agenda depend on each other. We think or swim together. Well, I know my answer, and I'm nearby certain about your answer. It is not about interfering in your life. Let me just put that line very clear. I've spent my whole life working in researching or regulating business, and I know that most of the time the best thing a public body can do is get out of the way. So the digital agenda is about helping you compete and improving the entrepreneurial climate here in Britain and across Europe. It is about increasing the collective IT skill base and growing the online market, whilst reducing barriers for business and for the consumers. It is about investing in technologies of the future and ensuring the entrepreneurs of today, you, to get the financing and having the infrastructures to develop and grow the business. Those sorts of ambitions will only be realized with a great deal of collective effort. Collective effort, in my mind, means partnership. Partnership is key. And the complexity of today's challenges and the sheer size of global markets mean we all lack expertise, we all lack money, we all lack confidence at some point or another. That is also reality. But sustainable partnerships are a way around this. And I think that the right role is often for the European Commission being in a position bringing partners and parties together, lift their sides and forge those partnerships. And in doing so, we are looking to stimulate a virtuous circle of activity. And then it's win-win. Removing bottlenecks to new services and innovation will stimulate demand, and that should increase incentives for investment in digital infrastructures and in innovation. And with strong partnerships, ladies and gentlemen, we can deliver those breakthroughs and new content and new services, and that will further stimulate demand. What areas does the digital agenda cover? Well, name it and I will say yes, that's also in the portfolio, so to say. It is about everything. So prioritization and delivery is certainly our next challenge as we move from vision to action. And that is at stake at the moment. But let me give you an overview of that vision first. Nearly 10 million, and I'm aware that it is now a little bit less, perhaps 9 million people in this week. I'm aware that there is a strong campaign for getting people online, but nearly 10 million people before this week activity in the UK have never been online. Nearby 10 million. Can you imagine what they could contribute to economic growth if we got them using the potential of the internet? And what about the ridiculous cost you face using your mobiles abroad? Malcolm was touching upon that one. Wouldn't a real single market for telecoms help with them? I promise you, there will be action in 2011 to deliver a permanent solution to that problem. What about making e-commerce easier? We have set a target to have 50% of the EU population buying online and 33% of small, medium-sized enterprises buying and selling online by 2015. In other words, we want to increase the e-commerce market by 35% from today's size during a period with when the overall economy will probably grow around 10%. That is a huge opportunity. Let's take it. We will support you by defragmenting the copyright system if you are involved in music or publishing, for example. If you are in B2B, B2Bit, might be e-invoicing and e-signatures that help most. If you are in retail, it could be better networks and good data protection that helps attract customers. What about the hard slogan of innovation or the technical aspects of the digital world? We certainly don't get amazing new technology by accident. That is just a fairy story. It takes sweat and tears and money. And innovators don't need a pat on the back or a small check just once in the life cycle of their innovation. They need an ecosystem of support they can always tap into. So we are taking action to improve how all stages of the innovation chain work. And again, partnerships will be critical. From helping venture capital make the right connections to opening up more EU funding to small and medium-sized enterprises and taking on risky research no one else will do. In essence, ladies and gentlemen, we want to see more commercial success for all the effort. And in a number of ways, the UK has set the example. For instance, the corridor between Cambridge and Liverpool Street Station is the closest thing Europe has to a Silicon Valley, and with the digital agenda, we are aiming to grow that potential. Yesterday I was in Cambridge, and I met researchers and companies like ARM, a successful company in microprocessors, and they told me, for example, the ARM people, Neelie, the EU money we got in the 90s, that money kept the lights on. And that was just a one-liner, no imagination, that was it. But now EU research funds are less interesting to them as a big business with more experience and more cash, so to say. And that is the sort of feedback we need. Does EU money need and meet its aims? How do we balance your individual views with the fact that we need a single system that applies to all 27 member states? And that, of course, makes sense. We do have to work with a system that is applicable for all the 27 member states. So when one of the professors at Cambridge was mentioning to me, would you mind giving me a glass of water or whatever? When one of the Cambridge professors was mentioning, in this case, in Cambridge University, you can just, thank you so much, you can just put your system on trust. I said, well, I take that for granted, but I'm not certain that that is possible for all the professors in all the 27 member states. So I'm not judging about someone in special, but we have to be quite transparent also to the European Parliament, so to say. Well, finally, a field I'm determined to promote: interoperability, open data and standards. In my mind, interoperability, open data and standards, it is critical for lowering business costs. And it is a must, and we can't wait too long, so to say. We can't compete on labor cost with the People's Republic of China, India, and name it. So we have to compete on seamless business processes. And the internet is the best example of an interoperable platform. And look how that transforms data and our daily life. And when Europe sets its mind to developing standards, it can also do brilliantly. And that is why our mobile phones work everywhere and why we are strong in that global industry. And I want those successes to be replicated. and we are in a hurry, so to say. And I take inspiration also from one of your fellow countrymen, Tim Berners-Lee, when he says that data is a precious thing. And I want to free public data so that developers can spread the wealth of that gold mine. For at the end of the day, we are talking about public data that are indeed financed by your taxpayers' money. So the innovative power and creativity of individuals and entrepreneurs can help make the public sector so much more effective than it is today. Wouldn't that be a challenge? We need to feed the engine with our data. And what does this add up to? A call to get every business digital. And that could simply mean using a smartphone, or it could mean a great deal more. It depends on your own business needs. And whatever the case, we need good networks as the base. That is the start of the story. And that is why the number one EU target for the digital agenda is 100% broadband coverage, followed by increasing access to ultra-fast broadband. Better broadband equals better business, so to say. Let me now dive into the theme to illustrate how we can take action. Many people like to compare themselves to the average, but that mark Europe as pretty good broadband. But the average isn't going to pay off debt or help you compete against Asian rivals with internet 100 times quicker, faster than your own. We have to aim higher. We have to aim for a first-class internet. And it's going to take a great mix of technology, action from all of us, together, so to say, to get there. And the market is already taking care of most areas, but there are others that require public investment. That is quite clear. The recently announced BT-EU partnerships in Cornwall is a great example. BT has worked closely with local authorities and is investing around 80 million pounds. The EU's Regional Development Fund is adding another 50 million pounds. And by the end, Cornwall will truly be one of the best connected places on Earth. And it will have benefited from 4,000 jobs in the rollout and more from the new opportunities the networks provide. That's what I call partnership. Maybe you could go one better than the Cornish. And I'm looking at Mark and at Malcolm and at you. There is certainly scope for it. Ofcom manages a favorable regulatory environment, and both BT and Virgin have been willing to engage in major new networks or upgrades. And even so, the UK's average actual fixed line residential broadband speed is still only 6 megabits per second in urban areas. And for rural areas, if they are connected at all, the average is 3 megabits per second. Will you put up with that? That's the question. The people of Rutland didn't. The result is that British smallest county has the best broadband. I have to explain that. I found that story so inspiring. The locals of Rutland raised £37,000, set up their own company, Rutland Telecom, and now they get broadband at least 3 times faster than anyone else offers. You can even watch the latest download speed test on their website. And all of this is taking place literally down the road from this conference, 100 kilometers out of this place. And the people in Liddington, for example, were ignored by the big boys in broadband. Now, for £30 a month. The villagers and local businesses get 40 megabits per second. That is a revolution. And it shows that change isn't just about EU projects or national targets. It's about local initiatives too. It's in your hands, so to say. And I also saw an amazing video by a farmer called, and I got the permission to mention the name, Christine Conder from Ray, north of Blackburn. Christine decided to do her own fiber dig. She decided fast broadband is the electricity of the 21st century. And right she is. After 48 hours and £1,000, she had her own fiber connection, with the help of some neighbors, of course. She lives on a farm in the countryside. And she says, if we can do it, anyone can do it. There are just a couple of recent examples. And I will bet there are people in this room with ideas to match. Let's turn them into more than ideas. For the Commission's part, we will work with each European country to open up spectrum so that wireless broadband can play a greater role. We shall be pushing, we shall be supporting all national governments to plans for meeting or beating the fast broadband targets I've mentioned. And we are simplifying how you can get access to EU funds. There are EU funds, and you can use them. We are hoping even to develop a new financing instrument with the European Investment Bank to grow the pie. Please don't miss out on those opportunities as they develop. It can be surprising, ladies and gentlemen, what's out there to suit the needs of your business or community. And even if you don't want to build your own network like Rutland, there are many ways to bring down the cost of better broadband at the local level. Simple things like, and I'm looking at Mark, simple things like coordinating digging, so you lay the broadband and electric cables at the same time. If you would like to read more about the details, the European Commission's broadband package was launched on the 20th of September, and you can easily find it on the internet. Just to conclude, I want you to know that your digital actions make a big difference. And sometimes you might feel like they are only a drop into the ocean. But without those drops, there is no ocean. And our single market has delivered us great prosperity. We must deliver a digital single market and a first-class internet too. Getting there means a new way of operating. And again, partnerships. For the EU, that means less assumptions and more ambition. And that is a deal Malcolm and I have made. For you, it means seeing that the digital agenda is not something that is going to happen to you. It has to happen with you. And take that responsibility. Please take that responsibility. Cities matter. SMEs matter. And I will leave Birmingham with the impression that people do care and that you are digital leaders. And I also hope you can help others and profit from their interest in learning about you and copying you. You are the leaders in the digital agenda needs. So I hope you stay in touch with me and keep thinking beyond tomorrow. I'm looking forward to our cooperation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Neelie, for sharing the EU's digital vision with us. I'm now very pleased to hand over for a Q&A session with Mark Reeves from businessdesk.com, Malcolm and Neelie. Thank you.
I was very interested in how prominent the agenda for opening up government data is for you, and how the how part of the agenda that you're laying down is to help small, innovative companies grow. Now, quite often they're the same thing. The kind of companies that can help get value out of government data are exactly those kinds of businesses. And in Birmingham, I think we've got an incredible range of those kind of enterprises. But one problem that they often find is a bit of a catch-22 in that because they are new startup, only having accounts, if they've got any accounts for 12 months or so, they're actually excluded by the procurement rules of large public bodies. Is it part of your agenda to try to change that?
Let me first start in saying that open data is one of the top priorities. And it's just also a matter of fairness, so to say. For what I was mentioning, in most cases it's financed by taxpayers' money. So please, let's give the possibility of a transparent and an effective open data system. So you can be absolutely certain that I will push that through. The position of the startups and the small enterprises, they are absolutely main. Just to mention one thing, small and medium-sized enterprises, 99% of all the enterprises in Europe are in that category, small and medium-sized enterprises. For sometimes we are thinking that the big ones are creating the jobs, the small ones are creating the jobs. The small ones are so important. And there, I'm coming to your point, it is indeed the startups, and especially those innovative startups, the boys and girls starting in the garage and then in the next step. They need a hand, they need a backing from their national government, from their local governments, but also from Europe. And you can be absolutely certain, also talking about our research and innovation program and the budget we have, that we are focusing on them and that it is a bit easier, so to say, and not with piles of paperwork and bureaucracy and red tape, but we are just thinking over a system in which we can make that easier. For now, the experience is, and I'm certain that the audience has that type of experience, if you have been in that position, that you give up before the final judgment is if you are in yes or no, you are already passed away, so to say.
Yes, thank you, Mark. First of all, just to say that public procurement is part of the responsibility of my committee. And we're very concerned about the fact it's not working properly. And Neelie's colleague, Michel Barnier, is going to bring forward a major review of how it operates across Europe. Now, specifically, the question on SMEs is a question for the UK and how it operates that. When I was in the opposition team with Mark Prisk, it was high on our agenda, and I can assure you that things will happen on that as soon as possible. I'm not sure exactly where it is in the business team, but I will certainly make sure that that is on their agenda about SME qualifications. But one other aspect of public procurement that I've been campaigning on very actively is actually to use public procurement to encourage those of you with a great idea that can be applied in delivering a public service to work with the customer to help develop that idea in the first place. I mean, that's an early stage procurement that will help you develop that idea and bring it through into production or in service, and can then become, hopefully, a global product. Now, that's something that, again, is on the agenda of the European Commission more firmly. There is going to be more money available for that. It's something that I've been talking to government about, but also Stephen Hughes and I have had discussions about this for some time, because I would like to see Birmingham as the biggest public procurer of any local authority in the United Kingdom, taking the real lead in putting aside a bit of that procurement budget to really help innovative companies. And I hope it's something that we may start to make some progress on over the next year.
Thank you. One more question from me before I throw it open to the audience. Neelie, right at the start of your speech, you said cities are where the digital action is. Now, that rather contrasts with the example of the Cornwall project, the Rutland project, where the EU seems to be putting its money where its mouth is. It's actually backing the kind of broadband rollout in areas where it's not going to make as much difference as it would in cities like Birmingham. Is there a role for the EU right here?
Not only for the EU, but also for the government. For what we put on the card Malcolm was showing you is every European digital. So that means not only citizens in cities, but just to mention again, cities are of great importance for the economic activities, our motor, so to say, to just stimulate that whole innovative process. But taking into account, for example, the farmer example, but also the Cornwall example, all those rural areas, not only in up north on the islands or whatever, it is over Europe in a lot of member states the case. There is a possibility and there is an opportunity and there is a push from the EU that the government will be active in just taking this instrument. For don't underestimate that the digitalization is an instrument to get those areas out of their depressive position, talking about employment, talking about the economy, and so on. So the possibility in the rural areas to have the broadband coverage, and that was my example from Cornwall, don't give up. There are funds, and in a public-private partnership, there is a possibility, and that means that there is a future for those areas. But again, cities are absolutely main in that whole economic development process.
Thank you. Right, I'd like to open it up now, conscious of time. We do have roving mics.
Okay, it is on, sorry. I'm a European businessman, I go to Europe regularly, and I am a European, and I consider myself, you know, part of Europe and everything, and I'm all for it. But what drives me crazy is, let's just take data roaming as an example. You're going to bring in rules on data roaming, thank God, in 2011. You should have been doing it in 2007. Why are you so slow? That's a reaction to things that are happening. You European MPs have gone to Europe and you found you can't use your phones. And that's why we're getting data roaming. It's a reaction. It's not, oh, that's coming, let's sort it out. You're so flipping slow, you move with the speed of a tanker. You know, wake up, come on.
Speed of delivery, Neelie.
I'm on your side. I'm on your side. No doubt about that. Do you mind when I just mention one anecdote? And I was already mentioning that I have a bit of my past in the former century, so to say. And when I was in the Dutch government and had to go to Brussels to join councils of ministers over there, then if you would have said to me, so I'm talking about the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, if you would have mentioned to me that in 2010 we are joining with 27 member states, and quite a number of the 27 from the former communist part of Europe, and that was still the case at that time, if you would have mentioned at that time that there is a single market in 2010. If you would have mentioned that most of them took the wise decision to join the euro, that you would have mentioned that I would be the commissioner, I would have not only advised, I would have brought you to a psychiatric hospital, for you were a very severe patient, so to say. Just to mention that within a lifetime, and less than a lifetime, things are changing. So, to be quite open to you, in my best moments, I do have the mood like you have. Come on, speed up. What is really your argument, not in speeding up? And on the other moment, I think, goodness gracious, it's remarkable what is already at stake, that 27 member states have taken this decision to do this together. At the end of the day, to have a better living for 500 million people. So, I get your message, and I'm even more inspired, but I can assure you that, of course, a lot of things should have happened earlier, but some issues take a bit more time.
Thank you.
Very quickly, very quickly, yes. Well, I wish it was because of pressure from my colleagues, because I have to say to you that parliamentarians are not notably technology literate. So it wasn't that. Actually, we started work on it in 2000. The industry was put on notice then, and they failed to respond. And actually, to be fair, I hope you'll give us credit for this, that the legislation on data roaming actually was drawn up well before the explosion in data roaming that we've now seen. But Neelie is now going to look at how well or how badly that's working and move forward on that, because, as she says, we have to have a permanent solution. So I agree it's taken a bit too long through the process, but I think I'd like you to give us credit that we were actually ahead of the game, particularly on data, because that was in the first package before we'd really seen that explosion of data roaming.
Okay, thank you. Can someone who's in charge of time tell me how many more questions I can take? Nicola, I'm going to carry on.
Okay.
Lucy.
Hi, I'm Lucy Huberman. I'm Professor of Digital Media and Innovation at the University of Warwick. I had an emanation in the last century as well. I worked at the BBC in the innovation team. And I just wanted to say something about the experience of working with Europe, both the pros and the cons, because I can sense that already a lot of frustration in the room of people wanting to do this work and experiencing barriers to being able to do it. So I'm delighted to hear about opening up to SMEs and more innovative projects. However, even I was lucky enough to be an industry advisor to an FP6 project, so I could watch the project without having to deliver the project, and that was fantastic. But colleagues, even colleagues at the BBC, maybe colleagues at Warwick, and perhaps colleagues at other universities want to work with Europe, but they experience a kind of, I don't know, a shudder at the thought of all of the paperwork and the bureaucracy and the delivery and the management of the delivery. Now, I think there are some sort of interim measures that maybe could be taken to help this along to your smarter delivery plan. And one was, came across a brilliant German company that took on all the management and reporting of the project for an FP6 project, and they were able to be paid for out of the project budget. That was a sort of innovation that I'm not sure has been spread, so that it took the burden off the academics and researchers while delivering to Europe apparently the best reported project of all time. Just then to touch back on the SMEs, there are also some interim measures that we've started exploring here in public procurement, say with the public sector. If an SME or a startup wants to do a project that it's not technically eligible to do, it should join up with a bigger entity. I'm doing that with an NHS project. I'm lending the university support to a fantastic project that a number of people are involved with. And I think what skills you need to be able to do that are to be able to manage complex collaborations. And that is really a skill we don't train for. Nobody trains for. It's just supposed to be part of somebody's day job. But managing collaborations is very, very hard. You need translation skills, and that's not just language translation skills. And I wondered if you had any views on how to increase the kind of workforce who are happy to take that work on, as I am, because most people find it a burden.
No misunderstanding. We are on a learning curve. We have to be very transparent. We have to be very careful. We have to be effective. And we are talking about big money. And we are sensitive when there is a mistake, then we are blamed and so on, even if that's not fair, because, but I don't need to explain it to you. I'm very much in favor, and we are discussing that in preparing FP8, and for those who are familiar with that, it's quite normal to discuss already what type of changes are at stake compared to FP7 and FP6, so to say. And therefore, it's also so important in this type of meeting. So the more concrete you can be, please, for we don't pretend to know everything. And I don't blame my people, for they are doing an extremely good job. And they are aware that Parliament is giving it a close eye, so no risk and so on. So could we make the deal that you, with your experience, just contact people of my cabinet or contact me myself, and then we will take it into account. But it is indeed about what are the priorities, and I'm talking about the PPPs, very important. And sometimes the bigger ones, and that was interesting, and even if it was not an open session yesterday with the ARM people, I think that I'm allowed to mention that. They were saying, in the 90s, what I was saying, we were grateful for, otherwise the light was switched off. Now we are less interested, so to say, but talking about certain projects where smaller companies are involved in, you sometimes need a big one to get the volume, so to say, and I am aware, and that was what they were mentioning when you were saying complex collaboration is at stake. That is indeed at stake. And who is willing to do that and who is willing to pay for it? For that is, of course, every entrepreneur's worry, who is paying the bill at the end of the day. And is that what we are trying to fund, or is it a bit different? We are also talking about simpler systems for example, lower amounts of money for the starters, the research, innovation proposals. But it is very thin ice. But please, out of the reality, give me information, and I assure you we will give it an eye.
Thank you, Neelie. Apologies, everyone who's got questions. We do need to wrap it up there. So thank you, Neelie, and thank you, Malcolm, for that. I'm going to hand back to Angela to close the session. Thank you.
Thank you.